Back on Radio Row, delighted to say that joining us now. One of the things we love about being at the Super Bowl is that, yes, you get to speak to sports stars and guys involved in football and in the teams and everything else, but actually it's like everyone else that rocks up and has a good time on Radio Row. And all right, they're out here promoting their work and getting involved, but I saw the trailer for the George Foreman biopic probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago when it first came out, when it dropped, and I was very excited by it. It looks great. And then when I got an email saying, oh, the guy who's playing George Foreman wants to come on Radio Row, are you up for it? We're doing it. Chris Davis is with us. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well indeed. How are you finding this whole experience? We see you in the Eagles hat, like your team here this weekend, the green as well.
It's fantastic, man. I've never been to Radio Row, and I'm having a good time talking with everybody and talking about the film, and I'm happy that my team is in the Super Bowl yet again. You know, yet again. You know, that it happened twice in a decade in my lifetime. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I wonder as well from that perspective. We're going to do the football first. Like, say twice enough. Is it different that second time? Like, is it like, that was so special. We were there in Minneapolis, and the number of people who turned up from Philly was insane. So second time round, are you still feeling that same energy, that same kind of like love for it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because as an Eagles fan, you know, we've had a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups, and a lot of disappointments, you know, but that's what makes you a true Eagles fan, is that you still wake up no matter what the record. If we only won 3 games that year, we'll ride or die. You know what I mean? So to be in the Super Bowl yet again, and with a team like this, how could you not have that same energy? How could you not have that same belief, man?
I love the energy that the team bring, from the coaching to the D-line to the, like, there's a swag there that I just love it.
Yeah, it's one of the most well-rounded teams that I've seen on an Eagles squad. And what's impressive to me is that they all have the same mind. They're all with the same purpose, you know. There's not a lot of ego there. They're all moving in the same direction, and I love that. And that's what gives them an edge, I think.
Yeah, I not just saying this to you here. I've been calling an Eagles Super Bowl all week, and I've not flip-flopped once yet. It might happen, but right now is what I'm feeling still. Tell us about Big George Foreman. How this come about?
Man, you know, it was the pandemic. You know, and we all thought that work was just going to end completely, and I got this audition early in the pandemic, and I was like, oh man, this is never going to happen. So I just did it. It was like 22 pages. 6 scenes, you know, basically doing the movie. You know, I did the audition and went through a couple different rounds and happened to land it, man. Happened to land it gratefully, you know. And that's about as simple as it gets when it comes to how I ended up getting it, man.
Are you a big boxing fan?
I am a boxing fan. Before this movie, you know, one of my favorite boxers was Lennox Lewis.
You're just saying that because you're on with
us? No, I'm not. No, I'm not at all. Not at all. When I was a kid, I loved watching Lennox fight. I loved his ring walk. And I would walk around the house doing his ring walk because he takes his time. He shakes out his arms. He shakes out his legs. He's got that little bop going on. And I loved watching Lennox Lewis. And I didn't know until I was older just how impressive Lennox was as a fighter. You know, I was just a kid watching fighting, and he spoke to me. Yeah.
I do think probably prior to what we're seeing now with Tyson Fury, for me, the greatest British heavyweight of all time, and someone we're incredibly proud of. So I love that that's something you never know with, like, a fighter from your country whether everyone else embraced them in the same way. So it's great to hear that boxing fans in America loved him the same way.
Yeah, man, he's no joke, man.
Love it.
Man, I would love to meet him one day.
He's here. No, I'm kidding. Amazing. So you get the role. You're a boxing fan. You know, you've been playing George Foreman. Firstly, did you get a chance to meet with George, to talk to him about the career, to talk about the moments that you were going to be covering?
I did actually. I went to Houston and spent a few days with Mr. Foreman and asked him every question that I could. But mind you, when I was there, I had to remind myself to ask questions because I'm sitting in front of George Foreman, the George Foreman. And at one point, he was just talking and talking and talking. I'm just staring at him. And then I heard a little voice in my head saying, ask him something, man. Just don't stare at him. So, you know, yeah, he told me a lot about his journey, a lot of things that aren't in his book, you know. And it really informed who I believe I wanted to tell the narrative about, you know, because we could all talk about him as a fighter. We can look at clips of him doing interviews, but who was he in the midnight hour? Right, when he's talking to his family, when he's processing things, because he's still a person. So he does feel all the same things we feel, and we can't just marginalize him as being just a beast or a monster, you know what I mean? A big, heavy guy who just, you know, could people either know him from being big George Foreman in the 70s or being the smiling, lovable grill guy.
I was going to ask if every food you ate while you were there was grilled, but
no, man, no. But I did have a George Foreman grill in college.
Yeah, I think we all did. Like, the problem is I wasn't making healthy stuff on it. I was making cheese toasties and things. So, like, you know, it goes unhealthy with the healthy food item as I could. Was there a particular moment that he talked to you about, or was there a particular fight? Was there something that really brought the role in his life to light for you, something that really brought it to life for you?
I mean, when he talked about his love for Ali, that was surprising to me. You know, and of course everything that he talks about is in hindsight, right? And I had to remember that I couldn't play those earlier years with the knowledge that he has as an older individual, looking back on his life. But it did surprise me the amount of love that he had for Ali. And he talked about that fight and how he was hitting Ali and the places he was hitting Ali and the sounds Ali was making when he was like ripping his torso apart and he hit him in the neck. And he said, man, he said, I lost the fight, yeah. He said, but all that punishment I gave him, like, he had to deal with that. Like, I could have done anything to his body. He had to go to if he had to go to the hospital, what could I have done to his body? What could I have ruptured in his body? And you shouldn't do that to a person. You know, so for him, he had to learn that boxing was a sport, that you shouldn't just go in there and just try to hurt, you know, and that's in our movie, you know. That's a beautiful part of our movie, that I think our movie's really about finding yourself, and he found himself.
Is it quite like, in terms of, because obviously I've seen the trailer, but does it cover like a full career perspective? Is it from life? Like, is it like, because sometimes you see biopics now and they focus on like a specific 2-week period of someone's life.
No, man, we are talking from the 60s all the way up to 94. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had to gain weight, right? I started off at 225, got to 280.
I mean, that in itself.
I got to 280. So filming the first half of the movie, because we did teenage years and championship years, I had to fluctuate my weight based off the week because we shot out of sequence. So one week, if I was 35 years old, my weight was about 235, 232. The next week, I would be like 19. So I had to get my weight down. So I would cut weight. About midweek, I would start cutting weight so that the next week, I was at 225, right? And then that following week, it would be back to the 30-year-old, late 20 George Foreman. So I did that balance for the first half of the movie. And then we took 8 weeks off for me to gain weight. And the first week, they called me and said, Chris, man, we're thinking about getting you a fat suit. And I said, look, you're going to be back in 5 weeks, right? He said, yeah. I said, okay. Come back in 5 weeks. In 5 weeks, if you see me and you think I need a fat suit, get the fat suit. Until then, let me do my thing. See me in 5 weeks. So they came back. And in 5 weeks, I had gained 50 pounds. Whew. So I went from 225, right, to 275.
I mean, gaining 50 pounds in 5 weeks is insane. I feel like I'm doing that this week on Radio Row. I'm not going to lie. But honestly, what did you... I guess maybe none of it was enjoyable, but what did you find easier? What did you enjoy more? How did you actually go through that process? Like, how do you gain that much weight and lose that much weight?
I had no problem with the gaining, right? I was down, but I didn't want any long-term problems. So I wanted to do it absolutely clean. So I did it on a pescatarian diet. I did no sugar, no dairy. And
I guess that's the impression most people get, is that you're going to just throw down 4 gallons of ice cream every day.
And eat a bunch of steaks and potatoes and things like that, and that's not it. At least not for me, because when people talk about Raging Bull, they talk about how De Niro went to Italy and ate a whole bunch of pasta and pizza and things like that. But, I was starting a play soon after, Death of a Salesman on Broadway, and I wanted to cut the weight. So I wanted to ensure that was going to happen. So, 7,000 calories a day, eating clean, a lot of salmon, a lot of grains, and I was basically putting food in my mouth on the hour. So it would be like a 1,200 calorie plate of food, And then an hour later, I have like a 700-calorie protein shake. And an hour later, I'm eating a 700-calorie snack. And then an hour later, I'm taking a protein shake. And then I'm back at a 1,200-calorie meal. And then it just keeps going nonstop. And I would have to wake up and start eating at like 6 a.m. And I wouldn't stop eating until like 9 p.m.
How did you find like getting off that at the end of it?
Actually, I think because I had gotten into such great shape for the first half of the movie that my body was ready. It didn't want the weight. I was forcing my body to have it. So once I finished the film, it kind of just fell off. You know, you stop with the sodium intake, you stop loading with the carbs and things like that. And it just, in about 5 weeks, I was down to 240.
If this acting thing doesn't work out, which I'm sure it's going to, but if it doesn't, can you be my personal trainer? 'Cause this is, you seem to know what you're talking about. Like that nutritional side's amazing.
It was very nice. It was very nice that it came off that way. I think I willed it off, if I'm to be honest, because I had no clue. I didn't hit the gym like crazy. I just did a couple days of yoga here and there. You know, I was like jumping rope a lot. You know, kept that going. But I really do think that my body was just like, we don't want it anyway, because I had gained the weight so fast that it was mostly like inflammation, things like that. You know what I mean?
Just let me go back just for a moment to what you're talking about with the Muhammad Ali and the Rumble in the Jungle. And I mean, some legendary fights. Joe Frazier, Rumble in the Jungle are going to be the two things that people really look out for in this film. How did you find it personally as somebody who, like, you know, involved in the world as we have it now, where we see protest in sport, where we see such a, like, you know, still the focus 50 years later on black athletes and whether or not they are using their platform for any kind of activism or anything like that, to go back and look at that time when Muhammad Ali was so strongly involved in that, and George Foreman and going to Zaire and everything that kind of represented. What was that like for you personally going to that time?
I actually, as someone who is a black man who, you know, from America, that just is the time, right? It's not so far removed. I mean, my mom was born in 68, you know, so it's not that far from me. And I think for me, I had known that history, you know. I had known that Foreman was there. I knew that he raised the flag. I knew what Ali stood for. But doing this film, I think, because that's how he ended up being demonized against Ali, because he raised that flag. He was the flag waver. Ali said it himself, right? So in a way, he was against what the black athletes were trying to stand for. And in Mr. Foreman's defense, you know, he really didn't have that kind of camaraderie from the other athletes. He didn't really have that kind of leadership in his life, and everything for him, you know, was a blessed gift from God, man. Like, you know, he was there in the right moment at the right time, making the right choices, and he had to fight for everything that he had, and it wasn't about any of that for him, you know. And I think that if he were to be someone who, you know, an older individual, a more experienced athlete would have said, hey, let me take you under my wing, and let me talk to you about this, or let me talk to you about that. It might have been different, but for him, he was just a kid who was excited to not be in the Fifth Ward's Houston, where nobody makes it out, to winning the Olympic gold in 1 year from the first day he started boxing, okay? He did a miraculous thing there, and he just wanted to celebrate. And it's unfortunate that it swung around on him like that, and it hurt him badly that he wasn't loved and wasn't respected like that. So what do? You embrace it. So he embraced it. He embraced the personality. You know what I mean? But deep down there, it was still someone wanting to be loved, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be respected.
Out at the end of April, big George Foreman. Yes. What's your next few months like ahead of that? Like
a lot of press, a lot of press. So, you know, I'm going to try to take it easy where I can. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Love it, love it.